Good evening, everybody, and happy to have you here at the Munk Center for International Studies on the downtown campus of the University of Toronto, where we are joined by an audience which went to our website, tvo.org, got themselves tickets, and have joined us for the discussion this evening. They will have their questions answered by our guests later in the program. We want to remind you that we're on television this evening from 8 to 9 p.m. Eastern Time, but we urge you to stick around because at 9 Eastern Time, we move from television to online. We move to our website, tvo.org, at which time we will take your questions and your comments for our guests. So if you want, go to the website now. We're live streaming this program as well on the website. Visit tvo.org, get your questions and comments into us, and we'll put them to the guests in a post-show web chat, once again at 9 Eastern Time. Now, are we bound to believe, and are we better for it? Some guests tonight to help us with that very weighty couple of questions. Starting with Ronald D'Souza. He is a professor of philosophy here at the University of Toronto. Jordan Peterson, psychology professor, University of Toronto. Nika Lally from Brooklyn, New York, author of Nothing, Something to Believe in. Now that's a title. Nada Tsonich, a spiritual counselor here in Toronto. TVO viewers will well remember Robert Buckman, former president, Canadian Humanist Association, and all the way in from Fredericton, New Brunswick, Michael Higgins, the president of St. Thomas University. Glad to have everybody with us who have come from points near and far. Great to have you along for tonight's discussion. Let's start out this way. The European Union recently funded a 3-year-long project called Explaining Religion, which apparently will involve scholars from 14 universities in multiple disciplines, and they're going to explore questions such as, what happens in our brains when we try to think of an omniscient, omnipotent being? Does believing in such a deity give us a leg up in being able to reproduce? And does believing in God make us more trustworthy? All of these kinds of questions. And Ronald D'Souza, I'm going to go to you first. How do you feel about money being spent on trying to understand what God does for us?
Well, let me start by pointing out that I know from Mark 16:16 that I am in fact damned to all eternity. Luckily, I have no soul, so when I'm dead, he won't be able to catch me. Now, this allows me to approach these matters with a little bit more in a more relaxed frame of mind than if I really thought that bad things could happen to me after I die. I don't see anything wrong about spending money trying to find out why people have deeply irrational beliefs. And indeed, I wish that people would spend a little less money on giving people tax exemptions for believing things which, if there was only 1 or 2 people who believed it, you would lock them up as psychotic.
Get off the fence and tell us what you really think about this, okay? Come on. Okay, President Higgins, come on in here. Do you think that the value of religion is enhanced if we can demonstrate that people with cancer who are religious experience higher remission rates?
Well, I'm not one much inclined to these kind of sociological analyses in terms of trying to demonstrate the enduring value of religious faith, because it seems to me that different kinds of criteria need to be utilized in order to make appropriate decisions. And so determining whether, these kinds of questions come up regularly, Stephen, in all kinds of surveys. If you're a person of faith, you live longer. If you're a person of faith, you enjoy a measure of sexual prowess you don't have if you're an atheist. If, sorry, Ronald. If you're...
That's one of
if you're a person of deep devotion, somehow or other aspects of your life will be automatically enhanced, and we have indicators to determine that. It seems to me that the fundamental question you ask about the faith has to address itself to what it means in terms of our being quintessentially human. Like, is it a component of our existential self-definition? Now, clearly for Ronald it is not. For me it is. And, you know, determinants along the lines of, well, does it help provide you with access to ready cures that wouldn't be provided by the Canadian healthcare system or something like that, seems to me in the end to trivialize religion. So this is a long way around answering the question, but gives some measure of my
Okay,
discomfort.
we'll come back to this. And you are sitting beside a man who spent decades dealing with cancer patients, and
Indeed.
I feel some obligation to go there. But before I do, did you want to comment on whether atheists have better sex or worse sex, which he raised a second ago?
Define better. More frequent, but he does. And in terms of disease, it does make you live longer. I must tell you that.
All right, I'll take your word for it.
Okay.
Well, you no doubt have seen this now. How do you respond to the stories where we hear cancer patients whose remission rates often depend more on the power of the belief in what the drug can do for them versus what it may actually be doing for them?
I looked into that in a very major way, and I actually did some very serious research in following up stories. There's no evidence, that particularly in cancers, that actually your attitude actually changes the disease. You can certainly get much, much more out of your life, out of the years, but you can't add years, and there are major studies that have shown that. But I would say that belief is a human thing. It's part of the human way of coping with the world. And I would actually suggest that humans arose to be the dominant species on this planet partly because we have this ability to make sense of the unsensible, the absurd, frightening and arbitrary. And the fact that we're able to say, you know, the god of lightning came down to visit the god of the tree, and they're having children together called god of flames, fine. That actually makes us much less scared, and not being so scared is what's made us a very successful species.
Jordan Peterson, I'm going to bring you in at this point. What do you make of the studies which show that people who are religious are less selfish, and they are willing to sort of share more equitably?
Well, I think that's a possibility. It isn't exactly clear to me what those studies actually study, because they prime people for religious belief, but also for general moral virtue. But I'm inclined to agree with you that the acid test for the utility of religion isn't going to be scientific analysis of the difference in behavior between religious and non-religious people. I don't think it's the right form of proof. I don't think it's the right method of investigation. I think it's really, in many ways, besides the point.
So what is the point?
Well, I can give you 2 points. In the intro, you suggested that people have to believe because they don't know everything. And I think that's an incontrovertible fact. People can't frame their interpretation of the world without resorting to assumptions. And I don't think that's debatable. I think we know that. And you also asked if it made people better. And I know 2 things you have to believe for which there's no proof that if you don't believe, you're much worse. And one is that existence is worthwhile. And there's plenty of proof to the contrary. And the other is that human beings are worthwhile. And there's plenty of proof to the contrary for that too. But if you don't accept those 2 axioms on faith, then you become corrupt and cynical.